Year 4, your LO for today's maths lesson is to be able to add and subtract fractions. Now, if you had a sum such as add 2 sevenths plus 3 sevenths, now you will see that both these fractions have the same denominator. And when we are adding and subtracting fractions, if the fractions have the same denominator, then life is very easy because you are able to complete the calculation straight away. Now, when we add fractions with the same denominator, what we do is that we only add the numerators. The denominator will stay the same. So in this fraction of 2 sevenths plus 3 sevenths, we add the 2 and the 3, which is 5. Okay, but we need to ensure that we keep the denominator the same. So this stays as sevenths. Don't think it's 7 plus 7, which is 14, okay? So we keep this denominator as 7. So 2 sevenths plus 3 sevenths is 5 sevenths. I'm moving on to this one. 4 ninths plus 2 ninths. Easy again, it's got the same denominator. So we just add the numerators. 4 plus 2 is 6. We keep the denominator the same, so it's 6 ninths. Okay, and it is exactly the same for subtracting fractions as well. 3 eighths take away 2 eighths. So the denominators are the same, so we can say 3 take away 2 is 1. Keep the eighths the same, so it's 1 over 8, or 1/8 is our answer. And then finally, this last example here before we move on, 2 ninths take away 1 ninth. Again, we just complete the calculation at the top. So 2 take away 1 is 1, and we keep the denominator, the ninths, the same. So 2 ninths take away 1 ninth is 1 ninth. Okay, so if you are going to be completing the 1 chili challenge, that is what you're going to be doing. You're going to be adding and subtracting fractions with the same denominator. However, if you're doing your 2 and your 3 chili challenge, which you should do, particularly if you are in my maths group, because can you please have a look at this part of the video, because we're now going to be looking at fractions that have a different denominator. So straight away I can see that this calculation is asking us to add 1/12 plus 1/3. Well, the denominators are now different, so we cannot simply add the numerators because we can't keep the denominators the same. Okay, so what we need to do now is we need to change the fractions so that they have the same denominator. And the way that we're going to do that is we need to look at the denominators and we need to think about what is the lowest number that both 3 and 12 will go into? Well, I'm going to think about my times table, and I know that 3 and 12 are both in my 3 times table. So I therefore know that the lowest number that both these numbers will go into is 12, okay? Because I know that 3 goes into 12, and I know that 12 will go into itself. So our new denominator is going to be 12. So we can keep the 1/12 the same. Okay, so it's 1/12, but we're going to have to change the 1/3 to make sure that it has the same denominator. Okay, so instead of saying 3 here, it will say 12. So I need to think about, what do I need to multiply 3 by to get to 12? I think about my times table, 3, 6, 9, 12. Well, I know I need to multiply 3 by 4 to get to 12. Okay, you can see that I've squeezed that in there, that 3 multiplied by 4 will give me a denominator of 12. But there's another rule with fractions, and that rule is, what I do to the bottom, I must do to the top. So if I'm multiplying the denominator by 4, I now need to multiply the numerator by 4 as well. Okay, so I'm just squeezing in there to remind me that I need to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by 4. So now we can complete the calculation because we're keeping the 1/12 the same. So it's 1/12 plus, well, 1 multiplied by 4 is 4, and 3 multiplied by 4 is 12. So now I've got a sum I can work with because now my sum has the same denominator. My calculation is 1/12 plus 4/12. Okay, again, so all we need to do is we add the 1 and the 4, the numerators, which is 5. And then we keep the numerator the same. Okay, so it's 12. So my answer to my original sum is 5/12. Okay, it's a little bit tricky because there's a lot of things that you need to think about as you go along with fractions. Okay, so that's just part of the story, because sometimes our answer will leave us with a numerator that is greater than the denominator, and that is what's called an improper fraction. So I'm going to show you what you need to do if you end up with an improper fraction as your answer. Okay, so for this one, it's great because the numerator is smaller than the denominator, so that's fine. But for the next one, that's not going to be the case. Okay, so my next sum that I'm going to look at is this: 3/4 plus 3/8. So again, I cannot complete this calculation because the fractions have different denominators, and I need to change the fractions so that they have the same denominator so that I can complete the addition. Okay, so again, I need to think about, well, which number will both 4 and 8 go into? So I'm thinking about my times tables. Okay, so I'm thinking that 4 and 8, yep, they're both in the 4 times table, and I'm thinking that, yeah, 8 must be the number that both 4 and 8 will go into, because I know that 4 definitely goes into 8 and 8 will definitely go into itself. So 8 is going to be the number that we're going to have as our denominator for both of the fractions. So again, this fraction is okay because it's already got an 8 as its denominator. It's this one here that we're going to have to change. So I then need to think about, well, what do I need to multiply 4 by to get to 8? So 4, 8. I need to multiply 4 by 2 to get to 8. And if you remember, I said earlier with fractions, what you do to the bottom, you must now also do to the top. So because you've multiplied the denominator by 2, you now need to multiply the numerator by 2 as well. Okay? So now I've got my new fraction. 3 multiplied by 2 is 6. 4 multiplied by 2 is, 4 multiplied by 2 is 8. And as we said earlier, because the 3/8 already has 8 as a denominator, we don't need to change that. We can keep that the same. So that's 3/8. Okay, and all we need to do now is add them together because they now have the same denominator. So we add the numerators, 6 plus 3. Well, now that's going to give me 9. And we keep the numerators the same. Okay, so it's just 8. Ooh, 9/8. I can see straight away that there's an issue, there's a problem, because the numerator is greater than my denominator. And that is now an improper fraction. Okay, I cannot keep it like that. Okay, so what I need to do is I need to change it into what's called a mixed number. Okay, and the way that I do that is I say, well, how many times does 8 go into 9? Well, 8 only goes into 9 once. Okay, so 8 goes into 9 once. Okay, then I need to think, well, what do I need to add to 8 to get to 9? Well, 8, 9, that's just 1. And then you just keep the denominator the same. So now, instead of having an improper fraction of 9/8, we've thought about, well, how many times does 8 go into 9? It goes into it once, with a remainder of 1, with 1 left over. Then we keep the denominator the same. So instead of 9/8, we've now got a mixed number, which is 1 and 1/8. Okay, I know that's a lot to take in, and adding and subtracting fractions, some children can find it a little bit tricky, so just try your best. If you are really stuck, then you know that Miss Price and I are here to answer any of your emails, or you can pop it on the stream or on the assignment, because for some of you this might be something a little bit new, and for others it will be a refresher. So good luck and enjoy working with fractions. Hwyl fawr, boys and pedwar.